Hi everyone. So this is the one video that you need to watch. At the end of this video, you will get all your answers related to the bubble security. What action you need to perform, how to more secure your bubble app. Basically, I gone through internet on Reddit, on Bubble forum, on Twitter, on different communities, even YouTube comment, and collect all your questions that you are asking for the bubble security, and I try to answer everyone. So this video going to be a bit long, but be patient with it, and yeah, it will give you all your answers, and it will also give you the actions that you need to perform in order to make your bubble app secure. So let's start. So the first thing that we do after designing and everything is database. You secure your database, and that is most sensitive thing in your bubble app. So by default, all the data that lies into your database is kind of public. Why I'm saying kind of public? If you simply create any data field, for example, I created audio, pass the data, and it's loading, pass this data, and you make an API call of do search for. Let's suppose you are just fetching the data, something like repeating group, and making do search for audio. Now this will fetch every data of that. Does not matter the current logged in user authorized to see that data or not. Does not matter if this is a sensitive data and you don't want to show to everyone of every user of your app. Second thing is, by default, every table, its column, its default values are accessible by anyone in your app. This is in regard of anything. So don't save the sensitive data in your table name, or you want to see that. Okay, just pick your base URL, say API slash 1.1 slash meta. Simply enter it. Sorry, we need to set up version test because that is app is not live. So if you can see in the types key, all your, this is your one of the type, that is SRT raw data. This is the key, the basically column name. This is the type of that column name. This is the display value, and same for that user table, same for event. So just pick base URL. Since this app is not moved to the production, we have to use the version tag. Otherwise you can see in the version live also, slash API slash 1.1 slash meta, and you will see every table, literally every table. Or there is a second way. Just go to the app, click on right click, go to console, and simply print console.log/app. It will just show everything. Let me show you. Yeah, these all are my table name. Under the user type or AWS file, custom workout, use more, it will show the column name, column ID. So by default, your all the database schema basically is public. All your default values are public. This is one thing. You can't do anything. I don't think you can do anything to safeguard that. Basically, just don't store any sensitive information. So if anyone can fetch the data using do search for, and my complete database data can be fetched, what is the way out? So that leads to the heart of security is like privacy rules. Privacy rules basically restrict who can see your data, and even Bubble gives you the lot of warning whenever you don't put any privacy rules on your data. It basically nudge you to put a privacy rules. So let's go to the privacy rules. You can simply define here. Okay, so whenever you click on this define rule, let's say current user, simply say current user is logged in. Sorry, this workout creator is current user. So by putting this logic, you are restricting only the current user can see their own data, and this is pretty powerful. So most of the times you just want to show the current user data to themselves. And so that is a way of preventing your sensitive data to be seen to the user. And there's a lot of ways you can put up privacy rules. You can refer to my another video to know more about how can you put up a privacy rules. So basically privacy rules sit on top of your database. So there is a database, and then on top of the database there is a privacy rule. So whenever any person requests for the data, it based the filter in the database and then go through the privacy rules and filter out automatically all the data that is not match the privacy rules logic. There's a two-way you can fetch the data, or I can say primarily two-way to fetch the data. First is using a native way of do search for and all this bubble native operation. Second is by the API. So let's first we talk about the API. And API can also further divide it into first is data API, bubble own data API. Second is user API, the user that initialize the API. Now first talk about the user initialize API basically. So whenever you go to the plugin and call any API via the API connector like this and simply say I need get recipe. So all these URL is public. Anyone can see whenever someone make the API calls, anyone can see which URL is calling. If you want to secure it, just do it something like that is a way of doing it. Next thing is whatever you put as a default value here, it can expose to your user. Anyone can see it. So don't put the sensitive data, client ID, client password. I have seen numerous times people do add parameter client ID, just pass the value and uncheck this private key. And anyone can see a client ID, and like literally I even posted on the tweet and people are surprised they don't know about it. So that is the one thing you have to keep remember. Never put a client ID, client secret. If you want to put a client ID or API ID, use this way, like private key in header, private key in auth, basically authorization, bubble setup authorization. So what it does is it basically store your API key or in your bubble server. So it never transmit to the client, and when it never transmit to the client, it never expose. So it is stored and pretty safe in the bubble server. So that is a way of properly handle it. One more thing I just want to highlight is don't leave the values here. Sometimes what you do just for the testing initializing the API, you pass the default value and forget to remove it. What happened? There's a two drawback of it. First is the security point of view. Whenever someone calls the API, it can easily see what is the default value it is. Second is if there is an issue in the workflow that is calling this API, even after that, this API will call because that will take the default value. So that is there. So I think you will not make any security related issues in API, hope so. Next we go to the data API. Now you will ask what is the data API and what all this. So if you go to your setting, go to API, here you will see there is one thing called annual data API. And if you go to the simply search bubble data API endpoint. So if you read this documentation, bubble API endpoint documentation, you will see you can fetch your database data directly via the API without initializing any API in your backend workflow or manually doing it. Bubble automatically built for you. Create, get data and everything you can do with this data API. If you don't require it, don't check it. Why? If you check it and there is no privacy rules are there, anyone can get this URL because this is the base URL. Anyone can see it. These are the static. Anyone can, whoever use the bubble for even one time, they know okay, this is the fix. And all your data table name is exposed already as a public. So anyone can see it. And they can simply call that API if you have not put any privacy rules. But if you have put privacy rules, then the user will not get fetch the data. So if you are enable the data API, don't forget to put the privacy rules, and privacy rules in such a way, not whoever require that data, whoever you allow that data can only can see that. Okay. And one more thing, hide the check this hide Swagger API documentation access. So by default, Bubble expose your all the API that you have set up, like data API and everything, as a Swagger documentation that you can access it anywhere. I think that name is meta/swagger.json. We already hide it, that's why. So if it is not hidden, you by default it is not hidden. So if it is not hidden, you can simply go to that URL and see which API endpoint, like my this Bubble app, this API backend workflow, and next one is this merge data, insert data, and all these sort of backend workflow is exposed. So anyone can use it, copy that, and see what is the input parameter, what is the output parameter, and everything, and can easily access it. So don't forget to check that, and also check this also. Use field display instead of a ID for key names. So what it does is, instead of a table name, table column name, like for example this event table, this have an order, so it will just rename that to the some ID, basically ops user of. Okay, the next way you can fetch the data or expose your sensitive data is by the workflow. So these workflow can also be divided into the one client side of it, and second is backend workflow. Client side, basically whatever the workflow you write it here, and backend workflow is simply this is the backend workflow. Perfect. So let's talk about the client side. So whatever the static text you pass here, like for example, I simply do expand and arbitrary text and pass some static data. So whatever the static data that you are passing, it is exposed. Anyone can see it literally. So don't pass your secret data, sensitive data here. Second thing, the major thing people wrong do is like they set up the reset password thing and use assign a temp password for the user. Whenever you does that temp password is exposed at the client side. So you can simply go to your app, go to your network, and just call that endpoint, and you can see the API that will call in that have a temp password. So even if a user is resetting password for someone else and you are doing that in a client side, even that user, they don't own the account, they can simply see the password, and when they have a password they can simply log in with also. So never do that thing. Next thing is OTP generation. So most of the time, instead of using a password based authentication, people switch to the OTP based authentication. In that they generate a OTP using a random string, like using a random, like sorry, not this one. And they do that as a client side. When you do that as a client side, this OTP is also exposed. User don't need to check their email ID to actually see the OTP or phone number wherever you are sending it. So that is the thing you should not do in client side. You should do everything at a backend workflow. Correct? Okay, now move to the backend workflow. So I already told you all your temp user password. Second thing is your OTP generation. Any secret process you want to do it in a backend workflow. Even at a cost of workload unit. Yeah, most of the you just want to save some workload unit and do it in a client side. That is not a very good way of doing it. Now comes to the backend workflow. Whenever you create any API workflow, it gives you the three options. When you do uncheck that expose as a public API workflow, when you check that, It simply exposes that API workflow to the public. Anyone can access it. How they will know? The URL I told you, Meta instead of Meta. Yeah, in the even Meta also. Let's suppose this is the public, and you can say test. You can see this is a test endpoint. Anyone can see this is a there is no parameter. Right now there is no parameter. That's why I'm saying empty array. But if there, for example, this is the endpoint have a parameter, it simply shows it. Anyone can access it. Anyone can call by the Insomnia or Postman or directly in API connector. So whenever you expose that a public API workflow for webhooks, use the hashmap secret method to secure your webhook. So you know who is actually sending that data. How to do that? Max Neri, one of the awesome bubbler, you can also follow him. Put a very detailed video on that. Check out here, and yeah, and see how can you do that. Next thing is this workflow can be run without authentication. If you by default it's unchecked. If you uncheck it, no one can access it. Even if you make it as a public, you need to pass the API token. Basically this token, this API token, or you need to pass with the current user. If you check that your API is kind of public, anyone can run that basically without any authentication. So don't forget to verify, do you want to keep it or not keep it, depend upon your. And next is ignore privacy rules. Don't check it until unless very necessary, because if you check it, all your privacy rule that you have set up in database to secure unauthorized access or who can see that data is null. Anyone can, like, for example, you have set up authentication for me and the user also have the same authentication, can simply access the data. So keep remember about it. Okay, next thing is design tab. Here whatever the static text you put here, edit me, whatever, it is public data, anyone can access it. Don't put your sensitive data here. One more thing is, for example, you want to hide that button for certain user. Don't check that this element is visible on page load and then put a condition here. Uncheck that, put condition here. For example, you want to show for certain user, current user setting is this. That's when only shows that. Okay, I think you got it. And one more thing, if you want to, the same rule applies for the pop-up also. For example, you have a pop-up that you want to show only for the certain user. Same, do the same for that also. Put a condition here, whatever the. And one more thing. So let's suppose you are building a blog and you want your user to, and you want to keep it behind the paywall. So what you have done is simply load the complete page, the article that you want to show, and on top of that you have put a pop-up, and you are thinking, and in that pop-up you are asking for the payment. That is a wrong way of doing it. Literally the wrong way of doing it. Anyone can bypass that pop-up. Let me show you how. Let me just set up this workflow. Let's suppose this is the pop-up that you are showing, and this is the sensitive data that is. This is small, but you have a long, no one can scroll or everything. So what people will do, simply click on inspect, locate that pop-up and simply delete that pop-up. Now they can simply access that data. No more sensitive data. So that is the one thing you want to. Okay. One more area is there is some admin pages are there. Okay, I just forget to tell you one thing. By default, every page name is public. Anyone can see your page name, like all these page name basically. So for example, you have some admin page and you want to only restrict for the user type of admin. How you will do that? For that, simply set up page load and put a only when condition, current user. Always put a server side of setting, because If you put a client side setting, like let's say you set up a condition something like your custom event is true, then only so, if no, then. So when you do that, in order to execute the client side of condition, your data will first load from the server and then your client side of thing will run. So you see your all your data is already exposed and then you can redirect your user. So instead of doing that, always set up a server side of condition. Like the current user is empty, current user type is user setting is this, user type is admin. These all are the server side of condition. And simply say go to page and only keep only one setting in that, only just one action, that's it. So you have set up a server side setting, you redirected to the login page if it is not admin. This is the correct way of securing your admin basically. I hope you basically understand it. And this is the bigger mistake I see everywhere people do it. Okay. Now comes to the option set. All these option set, all the information is public. Don't save your sensitive data here. How? If you go to your app, where's my map? Go to the console, this is the console, and again just paste console.log app. You can see here the option set is there. Not this option set, sorry. And simply say option set. Basically we have a 3 option set: OS gender, OS primary goal, and OS parameter. This is all their values. So whatever you put in option set is public data. So anyone can access it. Don't put your sensitive data here. Okay, now comes to some other utility things and everything. Go to always put your privacy policy, password, strong password policy and define it here. So put a strong privacy policy. Oh, sorry, strong. Put a strong password policy. And one more thing, if you required it, then only allow all iframes. Otherwise, simply say block all iframes. Okay, one more thing. So when you build your application, you end up creating a lot of test pages where you directly accessing data and everything. And since all pages are publicly available, page names are publicly available, anyone can misuse that. So before going to the production, just remove all the pages, all the unused pages basically. Okay, one more thing. If you are passing your Google Maps API key here, I have one sad news for you. It is publicly accessible. So let me show you how. This is map key. Perfect. Now just refresh the page. Go to source, go to page, go to package, go to the dynamic, and now search for this is map key. Now you can see anyone can access it. We'll go. Okay, now you can see anyone can access it. Simply need to search with the Google Maps key and everyone can see. How to secure that? Okay, to securing that, go to your console.cloud.google, go to the credential thing. Right now I don't have any API. So for example, if I have any API, let's create one API key. This API key I have created it. Now I simply click on that API key. Now you need to restrict it to your domain. So how you will simply come in this website, put add or pass your domain like star.abc.com, like something like that. Basically restrict it to your domain. So even if someone have your API key, they can't do anything. So that is one way of securing your Google Maps API key. And please do it. Please do it. Okay, one more. Most of the time we just ignore it. Always put, whenever you first launch your app, always put like username, password, enable that, limit access to your app in run mode, enable that. Since this is the agency account, that will come with the default, but if you using your app with your personal plan or something like that, always check that. Otherwise anyone can access your version slash text, that is half baked, you are doing something, anyone can access it. So it's better to put a username, password, or like a, you can put a strong password there. Always do that for your test app. Okay, if you have gone through all my video and you have taken all the action but still have a doubt, do I have secure my app or not, so what you need to do, go to this check.thinkso.com. It's an awesome tool built by the Thinkso. Just say thank you for them and pass your app id. Let's suppose I'm just passing my app id, this one. No, this is not my app id, this is my app id. Just pass it here. Okay, so since this is app is not gone in the live, that's why I'm not able to see, but it will show all the pages data API that is exposed still. And I think you can do one F1. Yeah, okay, this is one of my app that is showing. Here it is showing all the pages, all the data API if it is exposed. This is a workload that is, for example, this is the file upload URL that is exposed. Anyone can use that. This is the thing that is exposed. Anyone can use that. So I need to secure that. These are the two API that is exposed. You need to take care about it. All the options that plugin that you're using. So basically that gives you idea what is exposed, what is the thing that is exposed in your app. So yeah, that's it. If you have any doubt, any question, do comment it out. Let me know. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.